So my name is Kirk Evans. I'm an architect for Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft about 11 years now, and I've done traditionally very much a developer background. And only in the past few years, I kind of started shifting a little bit more towards IT Pro, but still my love is, any developers in here? My people, there they are, all right. Okay, so the IT Pros, I'm not going to say any management jokes or IT Pro jokes or anything. My blog here, blogs.msdn.com/kaevans. Everything that you're going to see today, I have blogged about at some point. Well, that's not entirely true. I've got a couple of new little tricks and stuff that I want to show here as well. But if at any point you see anything that you think, wow, that was really cool, how did you do that? My blog actually has the material in there somewhere, so feel free to go peruse. Also, twitter.com/kaevans. I admit I'm very terrible on social media, but if you want to go there, typically what I do is I use that to announce new blog posts. So instead of you having to go back and subscribe to my feed, you can look at Twitter, you can see that I just had a new blog post. So with that, I'm also terrible at PowerPoint. So what do y'all say we just close down PowerPoint? Is that all right? Do lots of demos. Okay. I'm sorry? I've got a couple of slides in here. I might break my promise and come back to and show if you really want PowerPoint, but otherwise let's just close it out. So there you go, closed out PowerPoint. All right, so what you're looking at here is Azure. It's just the old Azure blue portal. I'm not showing the new portal today at all. In fact, nothing that I would do today. Okay, let me back up. I always make the assumption everybody knows what I'm talking about there. There's actually two Azure management portals. What you're looking at here, I call the old blue portal, and then there's also a new portal here. Has a nice new modern experience. And unfortunately, all of the Azure Active Directory stuff isn't integrated with here very much yet, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to show this one. So whenever I make jokes about the old blue portal, it's this other 1980s looking version of Azure that you're looking at here. So sorry, let me grab a drink of water. In the Azure Management Portal, if you scroll over here to the left and scroll all the way down, you'll see this thing, Active Directory. Oh, I need my favorite tool in the world. Where's my favorite tool in the world? Zoom it, there we go. So you'll see this thing right down here. There you go, Active Directory. So this is Azure Active Directory. But to me, it's unfair to start our talk here. I want to just quickly show, this is where you find it, but I want to start back a little bit further. When I first learned about Azure Active Directory, I thought it was this. I thought it was in Azure that I have a virtual machine where I run Active Directory, right? And as I talk to a lot of IT pros and developers, there's perception that that's kind of, oh, it's just Active Directory out in the cloud. It's not true. So what you're looking at is a virtual machine that's running Active Directory. It is Active Directory users and computers that I'm just running Active Directory in there. The same Active Directory domain services that you've known and loved for years upon years. Azure AD extends this capability to the cloud. More importantly, what you're going to see is that it integrates very, very nicely. What a lot of people didn't realize initially was whenever we introduced this thing, so let's go to Kirky3, SharePoint.com is my site. And when you go to Office 365, you'll recognize this. This is the login. And we've had this for a long time. What a lot of people didn't realize was that Active Directory sat behind this. Azure AD sat behind this. So to demonstrate that, I'm just going to log in as this admin user, if I can remember my password. It is not password1 because I also had Jeremy's experience where somebody said, oh, you could just log in as password1 and went in and trashed my demo minutes before I was presenting. So I thoughtfully changed these passwords. And now I'm struggling on stage to remember what did I change it to last night. There we go. All right, good. So Office 365, if I go over here to the app launcher and I can go into admin, that takes me to the Office 365 admin portal. And in the Office 365 admin portal, we have users. And you can go to active users, And you can see all of the users for Office 365. And a lot of companies say, yeah, that's really neat that we can have users in the cloud, but I also want my on-premises users, I want a single sign-on experience. I want to be able to log in with the same corporate credentials that I have out in Azure, or I'm sorry, in Office 365. We're not quite at Azure yet. So to enable that, we had this thing called DirSync. How many people are familiar with DirSync? Yes, all right, so I'm going to go slightly quickly through this section. DirSync really is the ability to take your on-premises the identities, be able to synchronize those to the cloud. A misconception is that we simply just copy somehow the attributes and the password. That's not entirely true. What we do is we sync a hash of the password. And what we store in Active Directory on premises isn't actually your password either. It's a hash as well. So we're copying a hash of a hash out to the cloud. So your credentials don't actually go out there, it's a hash. So we have the ability, though, to sync these users to get a single sign-on experience. Why this is so important is because I can do things like I can go to users, and I can scroll down, and I can see that there's some users that are marked as in cloud, and some that are synced with Active Directory. That experience was not always a pleasant one. In the past, this DirSync experience was a little bit frustrating for, okay, let's just be honest. It was terrible to DirSync in the past. Has anybody fought DirSync and just absolutely loves it? Says, Kirk, no, you're wrong. This is the greatest tool ever. No, I don't hear that from anybody. So what we did was we introduced a new version of DirSync, and we call it AD Connect. So what AD Connect is the evolution of DirSync and the ability to sync identities to the cloud. And we're calling it AD Connect because it's more than just synchronizing a directory. AD Connect allows you to not only provision and set up the synchronization from on-premises to Azure AD, which now we know sits behind Office 365, but it also enables you to provision, what if you're going to use those users with ADFS? So how do I set that up? And that was never an easy nor pleasant experience either. So AD Connect allows you to provision both scenarios from one tool, and we simplified it down to 6 clicks. That's the marketing term. It's probably a little bit more. I'm going to show you those clicks here in just a moment. So let's go into Azure Active Directory Connect. It's currently in public preview. And what AD Connect is it's the DirSync engine plus FIM. So any of the people in here who know and love the user profile system and know how FIM works, yes, it's FIM behind the scenes. It's not going away. It'll never die. So we're going to pull up Azure AD Connect and go through the preparing to install. We go next, and then I could go in and do change repair. So let's do a repair. Oh, let's not. You know what? I'm not even going to go through the installation experience because I was smart enough to record a quick demo. So this is the only one I'm going to show a video. I apologize, but this is one of those that I just couldn't replicate. So if I go here to Evolutions, Azure AD, and Demos, and there is AD Connect. So what you're going to see is in AD Connect, I would scroll down, go to Active Directory, and everybody can see this just fine? Yeah. So go in here, and I would say your directory is ready to use. I could look at all the users, and I could scroll down and see all the users that I want to have in here. So the next thing that I would want to do is be able to actually synchronize some of those users. So I have users that are from my actual Active Directory and some users that are just in cloud. So what I want to do then is take users that are here in Active Directory on premises. I want to be able to do things like add these new users, marketing user 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I want to be able to synchronize those. So AD Connect is the tool that's going to allow me to do that. To be able to install, all you simply do is go through the installation experience, and it'll come up and ask you, connect to Azure AD, give me your credentials. Validates the credentials. The next step, and I even edited this to trim a little bit of time off here. The next thing it asks is connect to Active Directory, give me some credentials to that. And then finally, I want to set up the solution. And the solution is going to allow me to look at things like, what's the directory that I'm synchronizing? Do I want to do password sync, or do I want to set up ADFS? Do I want to enable write back? A new feature in AD Connect is the ability to do a write back of attributes. So I can actually change attributes in the cloud and have them written back to on-premises. Even better, I can change my password in the cloud, and that password write back will occur back to on-premises as well. So it's asking me to connect to my directory. Next, this is, I think, click 4 of 6. And then we can go in and select the features where we want to do write back, whether we want to do device sync, so we can actually connect devices to Office 365 and Azure as well. We'll see that in the demos. And then we go through the configure, and then here I'm just going to exit out of it. So there's my quick demo on Azure AD Connect. Now why I wanted to show you that experience really quickly is because the installation experience is pretty simple. Next, 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 pick a couple attributes, done. After a moment, it runs.
Just a question.
Yes?
Is there any difference between standard Azure AD and the premium subscription in this process?
So everybody heard the question is there any difference in standard Azure AD or premium in that process? And the answer is no, it's the exact same process. You don't need premium for that. In fact, when you provision Office 365, you get Azure AD behind it, a special version, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Okay, so now that I have the sync running, I've got it on a machine that's not on the domain controller. So let's open up. I'm going to say, yeah, I want to cancel all that, finish, that's fine. I'm going to open up, and I've got a little bit of PowerShell. Of course, we have to show PowerShell. It's a Microsoft mandate. We must show PowerShell in every session. And the PowerShell here is actually fairly simple. All I'm going to do is set the location to the path where this binary sits, and it's under Microsoft Azure AD sync /bin, so under program files. And then there's a file under there called directory sync client command.exe. You could pass it a parameter and say delta, that'll do an incremental sync, or I can leave with no parameters on it, and that will do a full sync. So I'll do that real quick, kick that off. And the other thing that I'll show you is if I go here to, under the directory structure, MIIS client.exe, you'll remember this guy as well, right, from the user profile service. So MIIS client, this is an invaluable tool to know that this exists. The reason why is you might make a change to your on-premises users and then do a sync and nothing's happening. And you can't see the password change, or you can't see the new attributes. What's happening? Fantastic tool to go in, open up MIIS client to see if it said something like, let me scroll down because I had this problem the other day where I started getting extension attribute errors. Oh, of course, I must have cleared the log. Kirk, come on. All right, that's two quick demos that are gone. But that's okay, because you now know MIS client would be the tool that you would go use to look at the synchronization.
Just a quick thing, you actually should the demo installing you run the PowerShell script. What was that for?
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, all right. Steve owes me this time back. I am slowing down. It's not my fault that he ran over, right? Are we good? Okay. Thank you for that. I needed that gut check. Thank you. Okay. When you install Azure AD Connect, then what it's going to do is install the MIS client. It installs the dir sync, all that stuff. It's basically install that one component. Next, next, next. Done. You're synchronizing. It synchronizes on a timed basis, and it's about I think it's a 1 hour schedule. So if I need to force a synchronization, the way that you would force it is you could go run that directory sync command executable directly. The PowerShell was just a neat little trick just to force the sync, so I could open up MIS client to show you the synchronizations happening.
Got it. Sorry.
Yes.
I actually managed to close my database there. I ended up having to delete everything. Sorry. Again, is there any way you can delete a single person's entry and that's not in the database?
Yeah, fantastic question. So let me, he managed to have some corruption in his synchronization process. So is that, what he's asking is there any way to go in and basically affect the metabase to pull out existing?
Everything and then start again works, but I would like to be
So let's take that question after. So the question was, can I go in and delete everything but one user in the metaverse? Let's talk about that after. It's kind of outside. So, okay, enough on dirt. Well, no, not enough on DirtSync. Let's play around one more time. Let's go back here and do something real quick and show you. Let's go to Active Directory users and computers, and let's go into the employees. And I'm going to pick up one user. Of course, let's do Kirk Evans. Let's go into organization, job title. I don't have a job title, so I need a job title and a department. Azure COE. We'll say okay. And then if I kick off that sync process one more time, so I'll go back over to the sync computer and I open up PowerShell. And again, all this is doing is let me force a synchronization process, so I don't have to wait for the timer to kick in. So I click run. And while that's working, let's go to MIS client again. Scroll up. And now what we should see here in just a moment is we should see in progress. Okay, so what it's doing is importing all of the changes from the local Active Directory and importing all the changes from Azure AD. Then it merges those together in this thing that FIM calls the metaverse to try to figure out, okay, here's the things over here, here's the things over here. Let me figure out the deltas so that I can then synchronize back up. And you can see what, oh, wow, there you go. You can see down here that I get a little number 1, that there's an update, that right here, right here. Sorry, like playing with that tool. So if I click that little number 1, you can see the object details. It says who's changed. And it says Kirk Evans and the employees OU, DC Corp, DC Blue Sky above US. So we can see the change that was made. You can use this again for, it's a fantastic troubleshooting technique to go find what changes were actually exported into Azure AD and was that successful. So now I should be able to flip back over to Azure AD and look for that Kirk Evans user to see that my department has actually been updated. So if I open that user, should be able to scroll down and look at additional details. And there's my department. Azure COE was picked up straight away. Cool? All right. So not rocket surgery, because a lot of people are looking at it saying, okay, I get it. It's Azure AD. That's not why I'm sitting in this session, Kirk. But I wanted to show there's going to be some people in here that may not have been familiar that it's really that simple now, that you go in, you verify domain. You can even do this through Office 365 side if you want. If you don't want to go straight up to Azure AD, you don't have to. But you have the option to use either portal. Question?
In DirtSync, you have this issue where you could really stick with custom properties. You only have a standard set. I'm wondering, do you have more control now?
Yes. Yes, we with AD Connect, it's one of the things is that we now have the ability to sync custom properties. Yes.
You don't have to build your own custom sync tools or something.
Don't have to build your own custom sync tools. It's actually part of the AD Connect UI. You can go in and say, what are the custom properties? Okay, so that kind of brings up an interesting point, though. What I just said a moment ago was you don't have to start in Office 360, you don't have to start in Azure AD, you don't have to start in Office 365. There's kind of two different experiences for managing the synchronization. And thankfully, the Azure AD team and Office 365 team realized this. So if I scroll down here, they added in this wickedly cool add-in right here. So I can just click and say Azure AD. So if I click that, I'm going to, what will happen is you'll first be prompted to log in as, whatever user into Azure. So I can log in as this user. And then it would prompt me and say, you don't have an Azure subscription. Click here to create one. You fill in little details, no credit card required. Woohoo, that's a good thing. And then it'll, after some time, it took me about an hour to provision mine, it'll provision an Azure subscription specifically for the admin for your Office 365 tenant, that has, this one's been added access to another one, but it would only have the Active Directory tab down here. Oh, that's not at all which one I was. All right, you know what we could try to do? I'll do it one more time, just to show you the whole experience. Kirky3, SharePoint.com. I'm going to log in as that user. Go over here to the access panel, and then we'll go to admin. And since I'm in an in-private browser, the reason I did that is I need to make sure there's no cookies or anything for the previous login session, because that's what happened. So I click Azure AD, and now I'm taken over to an Azure subscription for this admin, and the only add-in that you'll see for the Azure subscription will be Azure AD. You won't see websites or Service Bus or SQL Database or anything else. It's just Azure AD. So this makes it really convenient if the admin wants deeper control of Azure AD beyond what Office 365 exposes. And we're going to see through the rest of the demos why you want to do this. Because what you're looking at, this Azure AD line right here, for this directory, opens up a world of new possibilities. So what I did was to set up some of these demonstrations. There's 3 versions of Azure AD, 4. There's 4 versions of Azure AD. There's a free one that everybody can get. If you don't have Azure AD right now, you can simply go out, create a brand new trial subscription, create a directory. Trial subscription expires, no big deal. You still have your directory. So it's free Azure AD. If you want to go play with it, absolutely you can, no charge. Then there's a standard version, or I think we call it basic now. Yeah, basic. So basic gives me some basic capabilities beyond what free has. It has an SLA, has a couple of new features. And then premium. Premium allows me to do things like branding. You'll be able to see that I have some really interesting application capabilities, multi-factor authentication. All of that comes with the premium SKU. And then there's this 4th version that a lot of people don't know. It's the one that comes with Office 365. So if you have an Office 365 tenant, you don't have to worry about obtaining a new Azure AD subscription. It is already there. You don't have to do anything more for that. Now, one thing I would prompt you to do, though, is that I would go back and upgrade that subscription to premium. And the reason why is the rest of the demos that I'm going to show today are mostly featured around the premium SKU. Things like mobile device management and the integration of my apps and in the app launcher and how all that works. So without further ado, let me show you the reason why I think Azure AD is so cool. Yes? I couldn't hear you?
Sorry, you said 4.0 365, is that premium plus features?
So the Office 365 SKU is closer to basic. It has some MFA, some multi-factor authentication capabilities, has some reporting that's enabled, but not nearly as much as what you have when you upgrade to premium. Right. And I'll call some of those features out as I'm going through the rest of the demonstrations. Okay, so first one, that login experience. Let's make that prettier. So let's go to customize branding, and I want to change some things here. So let's change the banner logo, and so there's my banner logo. I'm going to open that guy up. The tile logo, I'm going to change that. Let's say this is awesome right here, and we're going to say sign-in page illustration. There you go. So we're going to say OK. And that takes a moment or two to actually save the branding and apply it. And so while we're doing that, let's go ahead and close out of the in-private window and open a new one. And you'll see I'm going to have to do this trick a lot, so get familiar with this as you're learning Azure AD. You're going to need to learn, open up an incognito window in other browsers, in private, in IE. That'll clear out the cookies, and you'll be able to do this really quickly. Let's go to the, we'll go to My Apps, myapps.microsoft.com. And I'll start to log in, and you'll see something interesting here. First, when I have no no context or anything, I haven't typed anything in, I get the nice little Windows Azure Active Directory, or if I'm going to Office 365 first, I get the Office 365 logo. If I start typing here though, and I do Kirk Evans at blueskyabove.us, since I did directory synchronization, when I hit tab off this, it does this thing called home realm discovery. In that home realm discovery, you can actually watch in Fiddler traces to see that it makes a call to Azure AD and says, Azure AD, what is the realm for this user, and are there any customizations? And then you can see that it immediately affected the UI, where I get the nice little pretty wind farm, my blue sky above logo back here. And then I could log in, and I could say this is my user. And I'm able to log into the assets. Jeremy also showed during the keynote the My Apps Launcher portal. My Apps Launcher, Access Panel, man, there's so many names for this thing. Remember when he showed, here's the apps in the Office 365 dropdown? I'll show that in a moment. What you're seeing is from myapps.microsoft.com is a launcher that looks just like that. All right, so what we did is we take all of your applications that you have from Azure AD. Applications, what is this thing, Azure AD applications? Thank you for asking, that's a great question. So let me back up and explain that. When I first saw Azure AD, I was confused. I really was. I was like, I don't get it. I can't join a computer to it. I don't understand what is this thing and why Azure AD. Is it just for user accounts? And at the time, the answer was yes. That's really what it was for, is just to hold user accounts for Office 365. There's this other neat feature of it that allows you to do applications. So if I go over here to my directory and go to this tab that says Applications, and you'll be able to see that I can add in my own little custom applications here. And I have things like this thing that's CA and Portal. I will be showing these in just a moment because it's just so cool. I can have a SharePoint provider hosted app and some other applications that I register. There's also these other applications here that I can add. So I can do a developer kind of demo. I'll do that last at the end of the session. But for right now, let's start with this really cool ability, add an application from the gallery. And notice that we have all these different applications that you can add to your Office 365 or Azure tenancy. So when you have Office 365, you do the same exact thing that I'm showing here, is the ability to add applications from other vendors. And why you want to do this is to enable this really cool single sign-on experience across multiple application types. So I can go down here, I can maybe add, let's go to social. And what's a fun one to add in? All right, let's add in Twitter. All right, I'm going to add in Twitter. And I'm going to say OK. And this Twitter app, what it's going to allow me to do is Azure AD is actually going to allow me to sign into Twitter using my corporate credentials. Why is this interesting at all? Well, how many people have ever heard of a company's password getting compromised and their Twitter account getting owned? Or their LinkedIn, their corporate LinkedIn account, or name some other account that's gotten owned. And one of the challenges with that is because you're basically giving the passwords to the people who use that, which are usually the sales and marketing people. The sales and marketing people controlling passwords is not always a good thing. So what we have is the ability not only for you to have them log in with their corporate credentials, enforcing all the policy constraints and everything else that we've always enabled, but also an interesting thing is because now I can do things like I can configure the single sign-on, and I can say if you want to do password sync here, or I want to do an existing like ADFS kind of experience, I'll just do password single sign-on here. I'm going to say OK. And then after that, I'll assign users. And now I can constrain what users in my organization are allowed to log in to Twitter like this. So I'll go back here and say users and groups. Do I want all the users or all the groups? So I'm going to go back and say, let's say groups here. And I can choose from users that have been synced, created in the cloud. So I have some Northwind traders. That was a group that was created in Office 365. I have another one here, sales team, that was created in Azure AD. I have another one called on-prem marketing, and that's another group that I created from my on-prem AD. So I have all these different groups show up or assignable to be able to do these tasks. Yes, sir.
Is this in your corresponding Office 365 AD or your premium?
Okay, so that is it's the same directory, right? So what I did was I opened the Office 365 directory using the Azure AD portal, using that link that I showed you a moment ago. So back here, you scroll down and you click this link right here, Azure AD and Office 365. That takes you to the Azure AD subscription. And then from there, I upgraded it to premium. So it's the same directory. Changes that I make in Azure AD are being affected and vice versa.
You don't upgrade, you don't get to use the existing groups, right? It's basically user permissions only.
You will get groups. The thing that you won't get, I'll call it out here in just a moment, is the single sign-on that I'm about to do to Salesforce. You'll need premium to be able to do the Salesforce demo that I'll do in a second. So, good questions. So I have, no, I don't want to do that. Let's go back here. I'm going to assign, instead of assigning groups, I'm just going to assign a user really quick, because I can also demonstrate that I can assign users that are in Office 365, users which are the same users that are in Azure AD, or the users that were synced from on-prem to Office 365 and Azure AD. I can assign those users as well. So I'm just going to go down here and look for my Kirk Evans user. That was from my on-prem Active Directory right here. So I can assign that user, I can assign a marketing user, I can assign my administrator, and click assign. And then when I assign the users, it's going to come up and say, after you complete this, you can optionally update the Twitter credentials for each enabled user, or do you want to set for all users? So we're going to say, okay. And then I'm going to go back up here, back to Active Directory, go to the Applications tab, and look for that Twitter application. Let's go configure that. And what I'd like to do is say that I want to set the credentials. Say yes and save. So we're going to allow self-service access to it. So let's go over here to My Apps. Oh, I'm already on My Apps, and I'm logged in as Kirk Evans user. So what you're not seeing is the Twitter application doesn't automatically show up. So let me show you how to do that. We just hit refresh. In just a moment, we should see a neat little link. It says your app has been updated. Click here to refresh. It's a web page. Why would we do that? What you're looking at is there's actually an add-in that's running in the browser to enable this. We have an add-in that works in Safari, one for Firefox, one for Chrome, and of course one for IE as well. And that little add-in allows me to do this single sign-on, where sometimes it will post credentials to a page, sometimes we'll do WS Federation callbacks, and sometimes we'll do another sign-in protocol. So I'm just going to click here to refresh, and we'll see that my Twitter application shows up here. I can set my credentials here as an end user, or as an administrator, I can set the credentials and say, I'm going to say that this is the credentials to the corporate Twitter account, assign the marketing people to it so they don't ever get the Twitter credentials. And even better, I can also tell it to automatically update and roll the Twitter password once every 2 weeks. So if one of the marketing people leaves, they won't have the Twitter password. They can only log in through using their Active Directory credentials. So I'm actually going to show my real Twitter account. There we go, sign in. So it's going to store the credentials for that application. And you'll see, if you watch closely, what's going to happen. It fills in really quick, and then there's a redirect. So, all right, so it's a neat little trick, right? And to be truthful, any of the users that log in with their corporate credentials would have the ability now to be able to go in and change and set and change the credentials in the application once they're in there. Can't really prevent that. But what we can do is we have lots of neat stuff like access, logging, and all kinds of other stuff. So let's go back and see how can we see what has been going on with all these applications. Well, I can go over here to reports. So this is one of those differentiator things. When you get reports in every version of Azure AD. With the free version, I think there's like 3 reports. The Office 365 version, there's a few more reports. With the premium version, you get a lot more reports. So let's go here to the reports tab and show you what that looks like. So behind the scenes, you've probably heard a lot of talk about machine learning. This is the big industry trend going on right now. There's a lot of machine learning behind this that's detecting things like anomalous logins. I can see who's been doing what, and I can actually use machine learning to detect over time what intrusions have been occurring. Can I see, has anybody been trying to do any kind of irregular sign-in activity? Users with anomalous sign-in activity. I can look at things like password resets. I can also audit report. I can look at self-service groups activity. I can use application usage. So let's look at application usage. Open that guy up. So I can actually run reports to see if all these applications that I expose, whether they're SaaS applications or my own applications, even on-premises applications that I can start to register with this as well, you can see that who's been using which applications. I could even download this to Excel to do more intelligent reporting other than just showing a set of numbers here. All right, so, wow, I have been going fairly quickly. Active Directory on-prem, we did DirSync, and I showed you with AD Connect, showed you some tricks with MIS Connect. Once we're in the cloud, that starts to open up, where we have the ability to sign in and add things like social applications like Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, those kind of things. We also have tighter integration with other SaaS applications. So if I go down here, there's another application here, Salesforce. Very popular application, a lot of companies use this. With Salesforce, when I configured the single sign-on, what I showed before was how I basically enter some credentials and it does a form post on my behalf. Neat trick. This is much more intelligent because now I can do things like I can do Windows Azure AD single sign-on, or I can do a password single sign-on. So I'm going to choose this one, Windows Azure AD single sign-on. And what that's going to allow me to do is to tell it, what's the URL of my Salesforce tenant? And then from there, give me all these instructions on how to register this as a trusted identity provider using WS Federation. So I download a certificate, I enter some of this information into the Salesforce portal, and now instead of doing that neat little form post action, what it's doing is an actual WS Federation sign-on to Salesforce. And even better, in Salesforce, I can even go back and say that the only way that you can log in is using the AD synchronization or the AD federation. So let me show you the experience for Salesforce really quick. As an end user, so I'm going to switch back over. As an end user, I'm going to go to Salesforce. I click it instead of doing like a form post kind of thing right here. So I'm explicitly not just making it sign in. I'm showing 2 different login experiences, and this is an option in Salesforce where I can tell it I want to enable the sign in through the login page, or I can use my own trusted identity provider, which shows up right here. So this is an option. I could just bypass this and have them log in straight away, or I can show the experience to prove we're not doing a form post or anything like that. So I'm going to click blue sky above. And that uses my WS Federation trusted identity provider, and now I'm logged into Salesforce using my AD credentials. That's fantastic. Why is this so important? Well, you fight this every day. having to remember 3,000 passwords. Jeremy did it on stage where he had to go back to another application where he stores all of his passwords. Having your corporate credentials where you could centrally manage that, set policies for it, this is exactly what the domain administrators are looking for when they're trying to develop their identity strategy for cloud. So this is a fantastic opportunity to be able to integrate not only SaaS applications, but also AD applications as well. Okay, so let's see. We just showed you SaaS applications, we showed Salesforce. And we showed you branding. Showed you that. Let's see what other cool stuff can we do here. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go through my list. It says AD Proxy. All right, let's go to AD Proxy. This is one of my favorite ones to show. Okay, so far I've shown you. No, there's one other thing I want to show you real quick. I changed my mind. I'll get back to AD Proxy in a moment because it's so cool. Another thing you may not have realized is in Office 365. I didn't even realize this until recently. Let's see, where is it? Okay, let's go to, I need to I'll open up my mail. That's what I'll do. I'll go to my mail. So I'm looking at my mail out in Office 365, right? There's this thing over here called groups. This is Office 365 groups. And what this is if you're familiar with distribution groups, or distribution lists in AD, the old legacy thing, think of this as a security-enabled distribution group on steroids. Because what this is going to allow me to do is integrate things like all the document sharing and everything else. So I'm going to go in here and I want to create a new group. And that new group is going to be, come on, where's my UI? There we are. Let's call it the Evo group. And let's say description, anyone can see what's inside, that's fine. Subscribe new members, or I can even say it's private. Only people, I can invite people into the group, and then I'll say create. It's gonna ask me, do you wanna invite anybody else? You said it's a private group. No, not right now. So we'll just leave it just as me right now. So there's just that one Evo group that just was created. Let's pop back over why this is so cool. Self-service group creation straight away from Office 365. So now I can use this for security groups. All right, as an identity guy that did a whole bunch with custom claims providers and ADFS and all that weird stuff, looking at this, my eyes went, like, are you serious? Look at how easy that is. I didn't have to go like read Spence's blog about how to go take the old identity access thing and wire that back into SharePoint. If anybody ever had to go through that, wow, what an experience. Self-service group creation on the fly. So if I go back to AD, I can actually see that group was just created. So let's go back into the directory and look at groups.
Okay, while you kick in,
Yes?
is there an API to do that provisioning?
Yes. Thank you for being my straight man. I'll get to that in just a little bit. He's asking, is there API to do just what I just did? The answer is yes on the AD side. I'm not entirely sure on the Office 365 side yet. As an end user, I'm sorry, who asked that question? Yes, as an end user, they can create groups if you allow them. You can also turn it off to say, I don't want people to be able to create their own security groups, if you so choose. You have that capability. So, is there ability to delegate and say some users can create groups and some others can't? Oh, let's take a look at that afterwards, if you don't mind. So there's my Evo group that was just created. I can go back and look inside the group, see who are members of it, and I can see only the administrator. So let's go back and add in a user then. Let's configure. You know what? I don't even want to add users, because here's another really cool thing is maybe from Office 365, I don't want to go back and add in users. Maybe I'd want to switch over and say, I want to make this thing dynamic. What is dynamic? Thank you for asking. For dynamic, what I want is anybody who fits a certain criteria is now a member. All right, let me say that one more time. Let me just show it. Anybody who fits a criteria. So it's going to say enabling dynamic groups will remove any current members of this group that do not match the rule you configure. Yes. Okay, so I could do things like add users where the department equals, or we'll say contains Azure. So,
This sort of pseudo roles-based stuff.
I'm sorry?
Is this kind of pseudo role-based access in terms of you can be an architect across the whole organization?
So this allows me to say, I want all the marketing users, I want all the sales users, and that way I don't have to go back and create an actual group for them and go back and start to set all the properties, or even worse, have to go back and set, if anybody's ever gone through this nightmare of, okay, I'm gonna have a group called sales group, but then you figure out there's one guy who doesn't fit that. So now I have to create another sales group without that guy, or another sales group that doesn't have this person in it. And so having those kind of scenarios really is frustrating. Then you figure out what is the thing what's the rule, and you can build that rule here into a dynamic membership. So then people can automatically be added into this group.
So that's also going to replace the sort of use of the SharePoint audience target type.
So yeah, audience is really about content presentation, whereas this is security. Audiences really aren't for security, where this is actually a security mechanism. Okay, so let's say Azure, let's say, or an advanced rule if I wanted to, and I can even write out more complex queries. I'm going to, I'm just going to back out of that change and say okay. So I showed you the dynamic groups. Victor Villan, he just did a great blog post on dynamic groups and how they show up in Office 365 as well. So everything that we're doing, the cool thing is I can do it in one experience or the other and get more deeper capabilities and than what Office 365 portal might expose. Okay, so it is checking time, and I realize that due to the time scale, how much time do I actually have? Anybody? 10 minutes is fair?
For a full 1 hour, you started right.
Okay. 5 minutes. We're good. Azure AD Application Proxy. Got to show this. Okay. So what I just showed was dynamic groups. I showed Office 365 groups. I showed the fact that you can sync. You don't even have to sync because it's the same directory. Changes you make in one or in the other. What I have here is, let's say SharePoint here, right? This is SharePoint with central administration, so you see that it is not Office 365. This is central admin. I'm just hosting it in my own environment. In fact, I was even going to go so far as run it on my laptop, and I realized y'all probably don't care that much about whether it's on my laptop or in a virtual machine somewhere. So it's running in a virtual machine, but it could just as well be on my laptop. If I try to go to from this other box here, I'm going to go to this website, which is portal. Yep, come on. Portal.corp.blueskyabove.us. And after it warms up for a little while, I didn't pre-warm this one up, apologize, it would actually log me into that website. Then if I try to take that same URL and you try to access it from your phones right now, you wouldn't be able to. The reason why is because that domain, that alias is not, it's not routable from externally. In fact, on my domain registrar, I didn't register an A record or a C name for that DNS. So you won't have the ability to route into portal.corp.blueskyabove.us. But everybody has these things, right? iPads. We have these all over the place in a lot of our accounts. We have phones. We want to be able to access these internal systems, line of business systems. So wouldn't it be cool if we had the ability to access this on-premises SharePoint installation externally without having to create a reverse proxy, without having to open up firewall ports? What if I could do all that with software? That's exactly what we're doing with the Azure AD Application Proxy. Azure AD Application Proxy is a feature that's only in premium. So if I go back here and I look at configure. And I look at configure, I can scroll down and see that I will have, to the question before about group management, and can I constrict that? Yes, you can see here things like delegated group management, is that enabled, yes or no, can create security groups, all that stuff. I'll go down here, application proxy. So Application Proxy, once I enable that right here, I can actually go back and do things like view the connectors. So I can view what connectors are currently installed, and the one that I currently have installed and enabled is right here, and that's on my AD sync box. To set this up is ridiculously easy. I go into Azure AD, and I'm going to create an application here. And an application I'll create, I'll just say add, and it says publish an application that will be accessible from outside your network. Okay? So I'll say publish. I'll give it a name, Evo Demo. Internal URL could be https portal.blueskyabove.us, and it's going to come out with a little, oh, he said that that's okay. Well, it shouldn't be. And then the authentication method. It's going to ask for, do you just want to pass through whatever credentials, or do you want to use Active Directory to actually authenticate the user? Yes, you want this. So I'll say okay. Now, if I scroll down, I've already actually set that demo up because there's a little bit more configuration that I need to add there. Come on, let go, portal. All right, just because you're being slow, I'll go to this one. And we'll go here to this other application that I've already created. It's just simply called Portal. I go to Configure. And if I scroll down on Configure, I give it a name, and I tell it what's the external URL, and I can choose Portal here, and then I get a whopping choice of a couple of different, oh, this is brand new. Ha! This just happened. This wasn't here yesterday. I was about to make a joke about, and you get so many choices, there was only one in the drop-down, but the joke doesn't work, because now there's three. This happened just last night. I love the Azure team. Okay, so if I scroll down here, it says this will be the external URL. External URL, what does that do? Well, this allows me to, because blueskyabove.us is not publicly routable, this allows me to give you a publicly routable URL that you can all go to on your phones to be able to access. In fact, while I'm doing the demo, it's going to take me a minute to set everything up. I'm going to load up PowerPoint. I'm sorry, I am going to lie. There's one slide I want to show you. It is the slide that gives you the credentials to log in to do the demo that I'm about to do. So you can go down here to this guy. No. This guy. That's it. So if you want to log in and do the demo that I'm about to do, you'll go to http://myapps.microsoft.com using whatever device. Login is evo@blueskyabove.us. Password is C conference 2015. So if you log in with evo@blueskyabove.us, conference 2015, on myapps.microsoft.com, you'll be able to do this and see the experience for yourself on your own device. And why this is so cool is because my on-premises SharePoint farm is now available to you as a user without having opened up any firewall ports, without going to my DNS and registering any of that, without registering that DNS record, and without any infrastructure required to make all of this happen. I simply download a piece of software, and the AD portal actually has a really nice step 1, 2, 3. It says how to do this. I just published a blog that walks through all the details on how to set up Kerberos and all that stuff. It's not that hard, because what it enables, now that everybody's got the credentials, is I can go to myapps.microsoft.com, and that's this right here, and I can go to Portal. And I click on that, and that's going to log in with my Azure AD credentials. And then you'll see in a moment, it's going to redirect me over to a web page that's going to show my actual Portal website here in a second. Hopefully it warmed up. If not, let me know when is it showing on your phones yet? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, a couple of people are seeing results. Not sold yet. Okay, here's the big ending. This is the aha moment. Why is this so cool? It's not just about empowering your users. It's about being selfish. We love to be selfish, right? I want to get to central admin. I don't want to have to wait for, I don't want to have to VPN in. While I'm on the airplane, for whatever reason, let's say that they're blocking VPN, right? So I can't use a VPN connection. So what if, and we've all had that, I was set at hotels, I couldn't VPN in for whatever. What if I could just go to a website where I can get to it? Well, you can do that too. So what I did here was I used central admin, Something interesting is going to happen, though. Different than when I clicked on the portal link, which should show my SharePoint portal here in just a moment. I click on CA. When I click on CA, what's going to happen is it's going to prompt me and say, oh, for added security, we need multi-factor authentication. You could do this on a per app basis. Per app. So I can say, just people that are trying to get to central admin, I want to have multi-factor authentication. I want a text message. I want an email. I want some other factor of authentication before I let them get into central admin, because it's such a secret thing. It's a highly privileged account. So this is absolutely fantastic as well. So you go back and say, set it up, and it's going to ask, what's the other thing you have? So how should we contact you? It could be a phone, it could be mobile app. Select your country or region. I'm United States. Send me a code by text message. 97282281110. Yes, that's my phone number. Please don't actually call. And in just a moment, my phone should actually light up if my international data plan is working. So with that, what I just showed you a whole bunch of stuff really quickly. I showed you a lot of stuff. Let me scroll back up. Showed you Sync with AD Connect, branding login experience, dynamic groups, password rollover for corp social accounts, showed you SaaS application integration, showed you some of the usage reports, showed you AD Application Proxy to an on-premises SharePoint, and finally, I'll get to the applications in OAuth. If anybody wants to meet me for beers later, I'm more than happy to show you that last bit of the demo that I ran over. I hope that this session was worthwhile. There's a lot of stuff in Azure AD, and it's not just about users and groups. There's a lot of integration between Office 365 and Azure AD. It makes it really compelling, and having the ability to do things like SaaS app integration, the advanced reporting, all that makes it possible to use the premium subscription really to light up the capabilities and power of Azure AD. So with that, my name is Kirk Evans. I am an architect for Microsoft. I hope you enjoyed your session today. And with that, let me refresh the page and land with a working demo. Thank you very much.